Okay, so I guess I am still showing my screen here. So let me go through and show you my section. Well, I already got sections. Okay, so let's look at them here. Let's go to thin lines. Okay, so when I drew this slab, it's just a 4-inch concrete slab. And if you like edit the type, I'm kind of answering Ty's question. It's literally 4 inches concrete cast in place grade. That's all it is. There's no finished materials. There's no insulation. There's no vapor barriers. There's none of that. There's no finishes above it. So all that stuff that shows on the typical wall section drawing, I just went through and added that in. Okay, so like if I stop the display of my, let's click out here. So it says display model normal. If I go to do not display, this is going to show me what I added. So this is all the stuff on that typical wall section that I added in on the detailing elements. So I added in the insulation, the plates, the truss lock screws, the anchor bolts, the insulation there. So why didn't I could have made this wall with insulation on the outside. Why did I do that? Well, then I would have to come up with a new coating material because otherwise it would look like insulation on the outside of my house, right? So I didn't do that, okay? Just to save myself some time. And then this is showing where my footing rebar lines are and all my annotations. So anyway, that's that. So I'm going to get to your question here. Okay, so when you look at this section, let me show you the other section. So this section here is just got a wall that goes up. It starts at this level and it goes up 3 feet. And then when I put that slab in, I just copied it and I did a 12-inch concrete slab. You know, I duplicated that slab and named it a new name and I made it 12 inches thick. That gives me that thickened edge slab.
So it's actually 12 inches thick all the way through.
Yeah, no, there's a way. I was doing this on the weekend. I didn't want to spend my whole life doing it. There's a way to put a thickened edge sweep in around the edge of the slab, but I didn't see the need for that because I'm not going to cut this section through it. All I wanted it to do on my model was look like a 12-inch thickened slab. There's a way to do a 4-inch slab and then thicken it out by doing a sweep and a profile that has that thickened edge on it. But again, I didn't need to do that because I'm not cutting through it and I'm not taking the volume out of the model where I needed it to be totally accurate. So I just made a 12-inch slab because all I was interested, when I looked at it on my rendering, I wanted to see a fat edge on that slab. That's the only reason I did it that way. Now, how did I go through and design and get all this to line up? I used underlays. So when you look at your first floor plan, there was a line there that I just drew like an annotation line or a model line to show how big it was. And I used that as my guide. And then I put my slab over the top of that. And then when I did my footing, I can do underlays and show that level and then just trace around it. I'm sorry, my foundation wall. And then you just snap your footing onto it, kind of like it shows you in the book how to do that. Now, where it gets complicated, where Levi was having issues is, ideally for putting the roof on there, I would have a beam that would like line up in relation to that slab, right? Sometimes the beams that set in from the edge of that slab, right? So if you look at this, and let me annotate on here. So here's my 12-inch slab that I'm doing. I'm going to do a column. And the column probably shouldn't hang out over the edge of the slab. I think one of these I drew hung out over the edge of the slab, but ideally the column should kind of come up to the edge of the slab. And then that beam should probably be centered on that column because that's where the structural piece would be. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then the roof sits on top of that beam. Now you don't need the energy heel on that one, so you can do whatever you want as far as, you know, the thickness of that roof and how high it sits up above the beam. Now, depending on your overhang and your roof pitch, you might not actually see that beam, but having the beam in there makes it nice so that you can snap the roof to it. So I couldn't find a pre-made, again, I was trying to work fast. So I could probably have found a structural beam that I could have dropped in there that was like the right size, but all I found was like steel wide flanges. So what I did on my roof, I'm just going to show you on the section, is I just did a little section of wall. Because I needed the wall anyway on the gable end, because I'm going to see the gable end. So like if I was doing a gable porch, and you could do this on even a hip roof, you could just make a little section of a wall and call it porch beam wall. And then you would draw that in at like a foot high, 8 foot 1 1/8 to the top of it, and then a foot down. And then you snap your roof to that wall. So let me show you on the section here. So if you look at the section 2 here where I cut through that, this case I didn't even rename it. I just used my siding on a 2x6 wall. And I put it up there, and my base constraint is roof bearing, and I brought it down 1 foot. And then once you put the roof in, there's a command where you can attach the top or detach the top from the walls. So I put in this thing, I drew my roof, and then you can attach this roof and it'll automatically fill up. It'll attach that wall to the roof. Okay, so like I can detach it, but it's still going to show it back up there. So since it put it up there, I'm going to undo that because I don't want to detach it. But what you do is you put your roof in, you raise it up, and then you click on this button that says attach walls to roof, and it'll go through and attach the ones you need to attach. So then if you look at the side one here, I didn't even bother doing what I'm telling you to do it about making a beam, duplicating that wall and making it a porch beam wall, because I was in a hurry. I just used my exterior wall for my house and I drew a little beam size segment of the wall, and that made it really easy to snap my roof to it. And nobody cares because you can't see the dumb thing anyway from the outside. It was just to make my life easier. So when I was drawing that, I was trying to line that up with the porch. And you can see here, like I had my column, and again, I drew a big fat column. I was in a hurry. I pushed it out too far. But the reality is I'm not doing a section here. It looks good on the rendering from the outside. And I was just, and you're going to be doing the same thing, right? We can try to get everything modeled perfectly great, but if we don't actually draw the sections and everything through there, there's really no sense us wasting the time to do that. So this is my quick and dirty way of getting porch roofs in. I just made a little section of wall, drew it around there like it was a beam, and snapped my roof to that, and then I was done. So that's the fast way of doing it. Otherwise, you got to try to load in the model for the right beam size family. And you could try that. I'll try that too if I get some more time. But that was my quick and dirty way of doing it. I literally took an exterior wall, made it the size of a beam, and wrapped it around my porch and snapped my roof to that.
So why did you drop it down a foot?
Because when I drew that wall, I said I want it to be drawn at roof bearing for my base constraint, but the reality is I want it to be down. I wanted the top of it to be at roof bearing. And then the bottom of it was going to be a foot down. And for
So the porch ceiling is a little lower than the inside ceiling.
So like this porch, I just put a soffit in there. Now I could have gone through and done a ceiling. Yeah, I made mine a little bit lower than the ceiling in the house. Now, you see what I did for my ceiling in my house? I literally just made a ceiling that's 1 layer of gypsum wallboard 5/8 of an inch, because that's really all I need. Yeah. So once you do a gypsum ceiling 5/8 of an inch, you set that in there, level, first floor, offset 8 foot 0.5, and it takes it up to exactly at the right bearing elevation. And the beauty of just doing a ceiling like that is now all my ceiling lights, if I end up doing a rendering, they're all posted up in that ceiling. And we don't need to do this complicated ceiling with furring levels and all that stuff that they talk about in the book, because all we really need is a layer of drywall. So it looks like drywall in our rendering, and we can snap our lights to it.